the Nigerian justice system and to the head of judiciary in Nigeria. Okay? We want to remind you one thing. Today you are sitting in judgment, and we pray and hope that you judge right, that you deliver justice to the people. The House of Justice deliver justice to the common man. That is their hope of the hope of the common man. That's what we expect you to do. That is how you redeem yourself. If you are going to allow judges in Nigeria to convince people, to shut them down, to try them based on no law, Nnamdi Kanu has said repeatedly, show me the law. Nobody can show him the law that he violated. Not Omotosho himself, sitting on the bench and cannot show the law to the accused. Where does that happen? The prosecution cannot show the law to the accused. The Chief Justice of Nigeria cannot show the law to the accused. The head of the executive, Tinubu, cannot show the law to the accused. Where is the law? You must be reminded that those judges that sat in judgment and incinerated 6 million Jews, they did not go free. Justice caught up with them. So if you are going to dispense injustice, at some point you are going to face justice, and there will not be any escape. Be reminded.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining me in this video. In a remarkable turn of events, a group of juries, attorneys from Washington DC have earlier warned Justice James Omotosho, if you fail to dispense justice, then at one certain point in time you will face justice. You cannot try a man based on non-existence law, reminding Justice James Omotosho that as a legal jurist, you should uphold the dignity as a custodian of the rule of law and the law or the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You cannot subject a man in a trial without defining the law which he offended. You fail to tell him which of the law of the Federal Republic of Nigeria Nnamdi Kanu have contradicted in the first place. On what basis, on what law, aspect of the law, do you base your allegations? These are well-performed legal, of course, framework that defines whether an accused is guilty or not. If you fail to do that because you may have vested interest or trying to please the political elite and the rest of them, be reminded that the world is a global village and eyes has been watching James Omotosho and the way he handled the case of Nnamdi Kanu. If you dispense injustice, definitely you will go in for it. It's not a matter of mincing words. These are, of course, exact words coming from the group of the League of Juries within the United States, Washington, D.C. That is quite interesting, as Nnamdi Kanu has filed a motion on appeal to stay the scheduled judgment today. And we've not had any development regarding that, whether such had been granted by the appeal court. But whatever happens today, if eventually that was not stayed, possibly James Omotosho might be given a judgment. But the question is, on what premise, on what law, under what circumstances, what are the evidence before James Omotosho? Has that been proven beyond reasonable doubts? It's one thing for the prosecuting counsel to present their evidence and, of course, argument. It's another thing to prove that beyond reasonable doubt. You can't just give judgment based on mere speculations, on assumptions or sentiment. And, of course, without having a recourse to the provision of the law. It's the law that empowers the juries or the judge to make informed position and based on the evidence before the court. And Mazi Nnamdi Kanu have expressed worries that over 8 prayers made at the court of Justice James Omotosho was not granted. He refused to pay attention to those vital concerns raised in the course of defending himself, and we are still asking him to put up defense. He has made a prayers, he has presented his case, and you fail to attend to those cases. What else do you expect him to do? Telling him that he should go and consult criminal experts, lawyers. On what basis? The evidence are before you. This court, the same allegations have been ruled by an appellate court of law, the appeal courts. Even when the prosecution counsel argued that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu jumped bail, the reason to justify the criminality, the extraordinary dedication of Mazi Nnamdi, that shouldn't be basis, of course, for justifying the criminality, the impunity impact by the Nigerian government. The federal government of Nigeria committed an international, of course, breach of international laws and treaties, bordering on extraordinary rendition. And after engaging in such illegality and impunity, you still subject Mazi Nnamdi Kanu to such level of cruelty, of trial. Look at the report of the statement by Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, one of the lead counsels, Barrister Maxwell Opara. He said that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu survived the cruelty, the level of subjugation and mean meted on him has never been done or suffered by any freedom fighter, either dead or living. Honestly, it is quite unfortunate for those who survived. The likes of Mandela never suffered the kind of cruelty Mazi Nnamdi Kanu suffered innocently, just for demanding for the freedom and the right of his people to life, to democratic dividends and processes, and their dignity and life to be respected, which today we are seeing how Nigerians are being killed mercilessly by the terrorists across regions of this country. These are reasons why Mazi Nnamdi can raise concern that we cannot continue in a system that destroys, that eats its own population, just as what is happening. The terrorists are having a form-free, fair, and easy movement, roaming about the streets, invading one community from another, terrorizing and unleashing horror and terror on the population of Nigerians. Even in the presence of the government, the security operative, they are helpless, including the security operative. Look at a whole major brigadier general, the way he was just pushed around by an ordinary terrorist that was not trained. It's rather unfortunate, but that is the reality today. A general was brought down in such a humiliating nature, which is a total embarrassment. The collapse of the system called Nigeria, the security architecture of the Nigerian system, not just the security, including the judiciary, has failed the country. Just the recent report opposition expressed by even the Grand Commander of the Armed Forces and the President of Nigeria, decrying the in-depth corruption, subversion of justice within the judiciaries, among the judges. Even Tinubu could confess, who has been one particular time or the other a beneficiary of the same flawed system, of the same corrupt judiciary. He is now leading the campaign, raising alarm that he is marveled at the level of corruption among the legal system. You can imagine that it's an indictment on his administration, and not just on his administration, but on the current legal system, judiciary, among this country today. Unfortunately, that have become a mockery and the laughingstock in the Committee of Nations. These have raised concerns over the sincerity and the willingness of James Omotosho to dispense the course of justice, because you can't be turning your eyes away from the realities and the concerns that have been raised by international juries, including Femi Falana have said there is no basis for which the federal government could indict Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, because those count charges lack merit and basis. Now, on what legal framework did James Omotoso want to convict, or even in the first place try Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, let alone giving judgment? It is rather unfortunate that is perceived to be prejudiced and honestly being influenced by certain political cycles, which indefinitely the international communities, Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, and everyone interested in this case have vehemently resisted. Mazen Nnamdi Kanu has no case to answer. If you think he have any case, tell the world on what law did he break. An appeal court of competent jurisdiction have ruled on this same case. So what is different that James Omotoso want to do? In the first instance, or possibly some are of the opinion that he has been, of course, contracted to do the dirty job. But this indefinitely will get stuck with him, because the international communities are not watching, are not taking any chances about this case, because attorneys of several nations have condemned the continued illegal persecution and trial of Mazen Nnamdi Kanu, that there is no basis for which the government could capitalize and still benefit from the illegality indulged in the criminal rendition of the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra. Why the terrorists have been negotiated, roaming the street, flexing their military camouflage, and dragging a general, brigadier general, to the place of slaughter, and the rest of them adopting Chibok, school girls in their hundreds, overrunning communities, and yet these people are being given incentives in the name of repentant Boko Harams. They are being reabsorbed into the security architecture, sabotaging the security, compromising the secret intelligence of the military, and as such have succeeded in bastardizing the security architecture. Look at a brigadier general puts a call to his superiors, citing his critical situation. He is in the den of the enemies, for them to mobilize for his rescue. Unfortunately, the military claimed they could not locate his coordinates, his exact locations, whereas eventually the location was compromised, and the terrorists intercepted his location. You can imagine, terrorists are now more robust, sophisticated, more technically advanced than the rest of them, to locate a brigadier general, and was slaughtered like not even a new recruit, like an animal for the slaughter, dragged to festive period as a scapegoat. You can imagine a general within the Nigerian defined territory, where as was pushed like toys. The way they tortured him to death is an embarrassment. By now, Nigeria should have declared the state of emergency. And I've been watching Tinubu keeping silent. A general of such caliber was killed in such a gruesome nature, and yet Tinubu has not uttered words to declare the state of emergency. What a compromise! What a sabotage of the security. The well-being of Nigerians has been traded for political, economic gains, and the rest of them. This informed the reason why even the judiciaries could not be trusted. You can imagine where judiciaries have been induced, have been bought over by building the state, the government, building houses for judicial personnel. So what do you expect them? Of course, it's a way of influencing the whatever outcome of judgment that might be given in favor of the executive. It's rather unfortunate. Look at what Wike is doing. And it's been alleged that Omotosho is Wike's boy and serve him tea and whatever. And with the current realities unfolding today, the world is watching that if you fail to dispense justice, of course, in the first instance, this case should have been dismissed, if not for the error of the Supreme Court, the administrative court, uh, to have based his reference based on a repealed law. How could a Supreme Court establish or make reference to a dead law, a law that is not in existence? That is a blunder. And the world is watching as Nigeria is being dragged to such level of embarrassment and mockery. Well, whatever happens today, of course, we will define the way forward and either continue to deepen the public perception about the endemic corruption and systemic failure within the Nigerian state, or possibly uh, give some reservations about this position. It is rather unfortunate. James Omotosho has been found wanting according to the submissions of these international juries are based on the provisions of the law. You shouldn't have in the first place accepted to try a man that is not guilty, a man that is presumed innocent, that have not violated any known law. He just asked a very simple question: under which law are you trying me? And he discovered that it's a outdated, repealed law. His prayers was very calculative, articulate, to define, if you want me to put up my defense, now these clarities must be made. Under which law am I being tried? So that I could put up a defense. And failing to do that means there is no valid charge against him. It's just like more or less what is happening this among the security operatives. When the police, you are being raided and the police ask you to put up, forcefully draft a statement, or they will even write statements claiming that you are the one who did that. It is quite very unfortunate. They more or less like a bully, trying to bully Nnamdi Kanu to do what is not right, or to force him to accept or to concede to defeat. On what basis? He should be reminded, just as this League of Juries have made it very clear. If you fail to dispense justice, then justice will be served. As far as you are concerned, I know the implication of that. You might think, well, that wouldn't bother, provided, Nigeria and the rest of them. The world is a global community, and with the attention of the world turned to Nigeria and the concerns that have been raised over judges that are perverting, adding injustice and criminality within any human society, will be definitely sanctioned. And these are reminders to show that sanctions is on the way. It doesn't matter where you are and what interests you are to serve. If you fail to dispense justice, you can't subject a man into endless criminality and judgment without a recourse. Under what law are you trying Mazi Nnamdi Kanu even while he was extraordinary rendition? How could James Omotosho deny the reality, the evidence of the extraordinary rendition of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu? Striking the case or the prayers made, that should not be considered until after judgment is given, or in the process of giving judgment or reviewing. This extraordinary rendition is a strong basis for which to discontinue the entire trial. These are the basis for which the appeal court discharged and acquitted him, struck out all the 15 count charges levied against him, which James Omotosho resurrected, or the League Defense Prosecuting Council resurrected 7 count charges out of the 15 that was already buried by an appellate court of law. And you begin to ask, what an iron, what a country, what a society, what a jurist are practiced within the Nigerian system. People who sees the truth, the reality, and pretend that they didn't see anything because their vested interest of possibly playing a script or whatever be the case. It is rather very unfortunate. But the reality cannot be denied. The world is aware of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu ordeal, sufferings, and realities today, and that is quite interesting and so these are realities that can't be denied. I don't understand what interest is the James Omotosho and the prosecuting councils trying to defend or protect entirely a man who was illegally conditioned and tortured for 7, 8 days without food, without water, chained leg and hands, still being subjected to such level of cruelty, or what was his offense? And Boko Harams are being pardoned, given, treated like first class citizens, and the rest of them, people who has unleashed horror on human communities, ravaged several communities, killed and annihilated families, communities, preoccupied, forcefully reoccupy the displaced victims. Of course, it is rather unfortunate. This is impunity, criminality, and injustice that must be condemned by all well-meaning, of course, humanity and people of good conscience. Against this backdrop, of course, the world is watching, beaming their light, and the U.S. have sent delegates, and other international communities are observing closely Jeff Omotosho and all the intrigues and the paparazzis that is going on, just as the IPOB have accused that the license for Omotosho and Garuba, somebody, and the rest of them are the reason why the Nigerian judiciary or has been brought to disrepute. Well, that could be their own argument and opinion. But whatever happens after today reveals, of course, the way forward. But for Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, who courts have discharged and acquitted, unfortunately, Tinubu government with the Attorney General or Chief of Justice did whatever they did to continue the trial of a man which the Constitution condemns as double jeopardy. A man who has been tried, discharged, and acquitted cannot be made to suffer for a charge, a cause. He has been freed. It is rather unfortunate, but this is happening in Nigeria for whatever vested reason. Look at the killings, the massacre of military, Nigerian military across Kogi, Kwara, Niger, Borno, and the rest of them. The government of Tinubu has not declared the state of emergency. That, to me, was a shocking surprise. Of course, down to the spines of Nigerians. What exactly is happening? And some people have real concerns. Now, Tinubu would have declared a mourning, a national mourning day for the generals that were killed, but he has remained mute. But if we are to be Okwama communities, he will declare marching orders to kill, steal, destroy the entire regions for a crime not committed by the same indigenous communities, only to find out thereafter that they were not responsible for that. And it was just the fight between the oil cabals and the rest of them. But the communities have to bear the brunt for what they never knew or are involved in. That is just injustice taken too far. But for the case of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, James Omotosho is on trial. No matter what happens, definitely, the Tinubu administration will be called to question whatever happens to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. The international communities are watching closely and observing, and only time will reveal what will be the way forward. But definitely justice can never be subverted in the case of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Let's have your own take regarding this update, and as we keep in touch with the development. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more political updates. Turn on the notification button so they can get your videos once it's been uploaded. Thank you. Let's get to know what is your own perspective via the comment section. Bye for now.